Thank you. And yes, let's get started. Good morning, everybody, on an early Monday morning. Great that many have already connected. So you're most welcome to today's policy webinar on diagnosis and treatment cluster under the Cancer Mission. My name is Annika Nowak. I'm the head of sector of the Cancer Mission Secretariat in DG Research and Innovation of the European Commission. So let me first explain you the webinar and also what is in front of us. So under the diagnosis and treatment clusters, we have assembled projects on refractory cancers and on diagnostics. And we have connected the 4 projects, which started only this year, to the cluster. So it's a rich cluster, which you should learn about today. But before we start, I really would like to thank my colleagues here in the Cancer Mission Secretariat for organizing today's webinar, which is always a major work. And it's always a great team effort. And this includes also members of the Cancer Mission Board, as well as our colleagues from HADEA that are co-managing with us the projects. So for the input, for the identifying experts and so on. But also I would like to thank Abigail and Wendy from the Health Policy Platform for all the support and assistance before and during and after this event. And finally, Lucas from the EU Cancer Mission Support Consortium. So before we begin, I want to let you know that also you as an audience, you will have several opportunities to participate and ask your questions. So no webinar without you. So please use that opportunity. We have foreseen 20 minutes for the audience participation during each of the panel sessions, so 2 times. Although we might not be able to answer all the questions depending on the number and the replies you will get, so we will then provide answers in writing so that we can really address all the questions possible. But we really ask you to limit your questions to the theme of the webinar or of the individual panels, of the content of the individual panels. So in brief, we're really looking forward for lively interactions between the panelists, but also you as the audience. And now we would, to warm up, have a question for you on the Minimetre. So what do you expect from this policy webinar? So before we launch the question, Lucas will guide you how you can participate in this poll, and then we'll look commonly at the replies. So over to Lucas.
Hello, good morning. Thank you, Annika. You can see in the chat, but also on the screen here, the QR code, which you can scan with your mobile devices to enter the Mentimeter poll. This is one warm-up question at the very beginning. You can stay connected on your devices or on your web browser to Mentimeter, as we will use the same instance later during the audience participation. After the panel discussions, you will be able to send your free text questions via the Mentimeter. They will pop up on my screen, and we will then be going to ask the panelists the audience questions. I see already 46, almost 50 participants that opened the Mentimeter. Can wait for a couple of seconds as we are close to 90 attendees in this webinar for everyone to attend and have their say in this first warm-up question. Also from my side, thank you for participating and for the kind introduction, Annika. So let's open the warm-up questions. More than 60 participants. What do you expect from this policy webinar? Responses are popping in. I mean, the first indicative results. Our majority would like really to hear what those very interesting and important cancer mission projects in this cluster are about, which have been supported so far. But also a couple of participants would really like to understand what the cancer mission concept as such is. And it seems that a minority, a couple of participants would like to establish contacts with other stakeholders, networking for future collaborations. But Annika, I think the majority of attendees here really would like to know more details about those projects. And I very much think that the panel discussions will help with that, and also to provide an overview of those and to allow everyone to submit their questions and yeah, get what they get out of this webinar, what they wanted for attending.
Yes, thank you, Lucas. And indeed, these webinars are obviously to help the understanding what are the clusters about, but also to dive into the individual projects and to learn about the interactions among the projects, what is it being in a cluster, but also, yes, to broaden the interactions beyond the projects, beyond the clusters. So that's the purposes of our webinars. Now, we should have opening remarks by our new director, Maria Pilar Agua Fernandez, but I need to ask the technical team. We don't see whether or not she has been able to connect at that very moment.
No, so far, I don't see Maria Pilar among the panelists, but we will keep an eye.
Okay, then I suggest that we start with the first panel, which... Oh, sorry, I'm too quick and I have my help here next to me. Well, first, before we now start the...
No, it's the keynote first.
Yes, the first panel, we have our keynote speaker. So I didn't want to jump that. So I have the pleasure, Professor Kjetil Tasken, who is Professor of Medicine at the Oslo University Hospital, to give us an overview on the role of pragmatic clinical trials. So over to you to your keynote, looking forward. And yeah, without ado, over to you, Kjetil.
Thank you so much. And thank you for the invitation to present. And I was asked to talk about pragmatic clinical trials with the Cancer Mission funded project Primrose as an example of how those can be used. And in general, pragmatic trials as opposed to other clinical trials are closer to implementation. A normal clinical trial is set up to answer a research question and where the inclusion and exclusion criteria may be very specifically designed to control a patient population so that that's ideal for answering the research question. Pragmatic trials are focused on deciding whether treatments work in the broader, more real-world-like patient population. And the Primrose project is about precision cancer medicine. And in that context, the pragmatic trial aspect also involves linking to normal or ordinary type of molecular cancer diagnostics that can also be used for routine purposes in order to be able to do precision cancer medicine trials in a wider context and also to controls that represents real world data, real world practice. How do patients fare if they do not get the precision cancer medicine approach? So that's a little bit how this distinguishes itself from other clinical trials. And the Primrose project and the consortium have actually had also a cancer or a EU for Health project called Precision Cancer Medicine for European Citizens, PCM for the EU, that ended this summer. Oh, I should just say I don't have any personal interests or competing interests. Sorry, but back to the PCM for EU project, that was about facilitating the broader use of molecular cancer diagnostics, molecular tumor boards, and also facilitate more countries to start pragmatically organized clinical trials in precision medicine. As I said, this project with 17 partners ran until this summer for 2.5 years, and therefore have had a lot of deliverables being submitted now, and they are on how to organize molecular diagnostics and tumor boards. What are the standard practices if more countries in Europe think about starting those? How to facilitate start of broader, more pragmatic precision medicine trials, and how to implement this, and also on equitable access and cross-border access along with training. And as I said, a lot of deliverables have been coming out of this project that was then very useful when this was already started to get the Primrose project started. And the Primrose project is a cancer mission funded project. Primrose stands for Precision Cancer Medicine Repurposing System using pragmatic clinical trials. It involves the same consortium, but we invited more partners that could follow the project to see if they could get started with broader national precision medicine approaches. This project and the trials are based on a Dutch trial, the DRUP trial, Drug Repurposing Protocol in the Netherlands, that started 2016 and had their first report in 2019. They were very willing to share their protocol, and for that reason, several countries could start similarly organized trials. So at the moment, there is the original DRUP trial in the Netherlands. There is a similar trial called ProTarget in Denmark, one in Norway that I'm involved in also, Impress Norway, one in Finland, FinProve. There is a new trial starting in Sweden. There has been one already called Focus. In France, there is the MOST series of trials that have a little bit different organization, but can still align with the same concept. In the UK, also affiliated with the project, is the Determine trial. In Portugal, there is the POP trial that's ready to start, and in Estonia and Lithuania, there are also trials that are about ready to start. So 7 of these trials are already running, 4 of them are ready to start, and then there are other initiatives that would also are also looking to start in regions of Germany, Italy, and Spain. And these trials were co-developed with initiatives in the US, the TAPER study, and Canada, as well as in Japan. So this is a concept where one has trials that can test broad use of precision cancer medicine, tapping into molecularly organized tumor board, cancer diagnostics and tumor boards, and then recruiting drugs that are tested outside their current use to explore wider use for cancer drugs, targeted cancer therapies, coupled to molecular diagnostics, where the industry does not go to document. All of this is about collecting more evidence of what's actually working and what's not working in a broader context. So if we look somewhat more closely, this shows the list of partners, and that involves countries that have a trial, but also a number of countries and partners that follow the project and are either looking concretely at starting a trial or will go there, or will want to go there later. These trials then have a similar organization, and it's a combination of 2 designs that are used in precision cancer medicine, which is either looking to see in the same organ, if there is a cancer, what are the mutations in that cancer, what individual treatment should the patient have as an umbrella design, or looking to see could the same mutation in different cancers be treated with the same drug. If you combine these designs, the treatment of a patient is defined both by the biomarker or mutation or molecular alteration and by the organ-specific diagnosis coupled to a specific treatment. These trials also follow a statistical model that's expanding. There can actually be several statistical models, but they're quite well aligned. And the expanding statistical model is about not treating too many patients with something that we can find out does not work. So these trials are typically organized in stages, where you start with a few patients, you see if there are any responders. It can expand to a second stage where you treat more patients, and it can also expand to what is like a single-arm phase 2 trial in the last stage. So typically, most of these trials start with 8 patients. They expand with 16 additional patients. If 5 or more have a response, is regarded positive, and it can then also expand into a larger trial. So the Primrose project gathers trials that have this organization and this context on a national arena. And many of these trials were organized nationally first because of the funding of the diagnostics. The diagnostics is funded in different ways, but it is funded in countries that operate such trials. And then it's a partnering with the industry. They come in with their drugs. They provide those for free to this investigator-initiated approach to explore use of the drugs outside their current label, outside of what industry has documented, to collect more evidence to support further implementation. The project has multi-stakeholder participation. Also, regulators and HTA assessors, payers have been involved in setting up and running the project. It has a decentralized organization that reaches out to different trials. Many of the trials also offer outcome-based risk sharing, meaning that the payment for the drug or cost of the drug can also be taken over by public authorities if the patient is a responder. That takes down the risk for industry. And the use of the molecular diagnostics, etc., and the trials have been expanding. The next thing that we are doing is we aggregate the data between the different national trials to find sooner, also in the pragmatic approach, what are the results and how can we sort of gather and build the evidence of what's working. And you can see here with the statistical model examples of many cohorts that are open, because each drug in each type of diagnosis will be like a small phase 2 trials. So each of these trials is a big cluster of many small phase 1 trials, you could say. And the reason why we can aggregate the data is that all these trials have a similar platform protocol where we can add drugs. And if the drug is investigated in more than one trial, we can merge and aggregate data. The requirement for that, and that's shown here, is that the research questions in the trials are the same. And since this is a platform protocol that has been shared, that is the case. And the upper part of the table here is the primary endpoints or primary research questions in the trials. And you can see that those are aligned between all the trials. And that's the basis for being able to aggregate data between these trials. The other basis for aggregating the data is that we standardize the type of data. And this table shows 40 parameters that are shared between the patients, can be shared between the trials per patient, and they can be shared because their description, how they're reported, is standardized to a model for how you report clinical data. So with those two prerequisites, that was possible to aggregate data. And in this project that started in summer of 2023, we, in the first 9 months, negotiated all the data sharing agreements between the trials. And then we started with every month to meet and with quite a lot of work in between the meetings to align the definitions of the cohorts of small phase 1 trials that were open on the biomarker definition. And then we can monitor the filling of shared cohorts across all the trials. And so far, we aligned the definitions to 78 biomarkers in 108 tumor types with 24 different treatments. And we follow the filling of 374 cohorts to 374 small phase 1 clinical trials inside these clusters of group-like trials. That's about 1,000 patients. Then when we reach the different steps in the statistical model, we have 8 patients or 24 patients. We can then merge the cohorts. And so far we merged 23 cohorts, 19 cohorts that were filled with more than 8 patients, and where more than one was a responder, and where the decision jointly was to expand to stage 2, and 4 cohorts that had more than 24 patients, and where there is a discussion as to whether we should expand to stage 3, more like a phase 2 clinical trial. And the Primrose project has funding to support, not fully, but partly, for such expansion cohorts. And we have defined the first one, and we're in the process of defining the second one. This has worked beautifully in this context to gather data around Europe, merge the data, and then basically reach the result faster. And the trials come together to do this. And I think one of the reasons why it works is we do not take the data. We go cohort by cohort. We ask each trial, do they want to put their data into these merged cohorts? And they decide that for themselves every time each trial. So that has been very nice to see that it works, actually. The other aspect that we've been working on and that has funding inside this project is how to control the data for regulators and payers to see how does what we observe with a particular treatment in this setup, how does that compare to the standard of care treatment for patients? And to do that, we have research on how can we organize real-world evidence to function as controls for the patients that are in arms of these trials, basically. And that's parallel work, and it's highlighted here in a discussion paper how we're doing that. There is ongoing work on how to do that. Then in order to see if we can attract more drugs and work with more industry partners, we also put in between the trials single point of entry and joint negotiations so that industry can approach the whole network of trials rather than one trial at the time. That lowers the threshold for the industry. They don't need to negotiate with all the trials or consider. And we put in floating treatment slots that can be distributed between the trials. So basically, the next treatment slot to fill a joint cohort goes to the trial that finds the next patient with a rare biomarker. And we take drugs that are approved for one indication in FDA or EMA so far. We're now looking at going earlier in the lines of treatment and to work closely with the industry also to attract more drugs earlier. Together, these trials at present cover a population of approximately 70 million people, and where more than 150 patients are discussed every week in molecular tumor boards and then can potentially be recruited to treatment arms. Then the reason for the reason that this seems to be working quite well, it's also served as one of the blueprints or how to sort of scale this further in Europe when the joint action for precision cancer medicine that is now starting has been planned, and the Primrose Consortium is very much involved in what's called Work Package 8 in the Joint Action for Precision Cancer Medicine, which is about building treatment networks that go even further and can reach the much broader European population. And that's about European competitiveness in attracting trials and experimental treatment for our patients. So if you look to see how has this or what you need in the country to sort of fit into this type of development for precision cancer medicine, and how has that evolved, basically you need to build an ecosystem, and if you look at the Netherlands and Norway as examples, we had to first set up the advanced molecular diagnostics to be able to find patients that can be included in precision cancer medicine trials. And then we started these pragmatic nationwide trials that are DRUP-like trials. But in addition to that, we also needed to build around that what we could call a pentahelix ecosystem, where you also attract industry. There is discussion with industry, but also with national decision makers, payers, HTAs, the wider community. And you can say that the Primrose project fits here because it gathers the clinical trials. The PCM for EU project was more about on the European level to make sure that countries will help countries that did not yet have the advanced molecular diagnostics to describe how to start and how to operate molecular tumor boards, because that's the first thing you need in order to organize the ecosystem. I think ECHOS can be helpful. I think the Joint Action for Precision Cancer Medicine can be helpful, and there are also other initiatives that can be helpful in that respect. So the Primrose project is a network of ongoing investigator-initiated pragmatic trials. They're also dynamic. They can add drugs because they're platform trials to explore efficacy and safety signals in precision oncology, and to go outside the current label of drugs. We put in single point of entry for the consortium, so it's possible to access the whole network of trials from the industry side, and scale the search for patients with rarer biomarkers. We can add drugs as we go because of the platform organization. We can build these expansion cohorts that's partly funded by the Primrose project to gather evidence. And this organization is all about gathering evidence for the use of cancer drugs, targeted cancer drugs, to find out what's working and what's not working. And that's one of the bottlenecks in precision cancer medicine implementation. A lot of things become rare, and we need to have that type of reach in order to find patients and build the documentation. If we were to say that you need 2 phase 3 randomized clinical trials for every rare cancer indication, they would not be able to, drugs would not proceed to reimbursement basically. So we need to find other models. The data sharing and OMOP standardization has been very useful to be able to aggregate the data, and we explore the use of real-world evidence for control cohorts as well as reimbursement models. So that's an example of how such a pragmatic system works. And then this will be one of the blueprints for how to build the collection of evidence on treatment in the Joint Action for Precision Cancer Medicine. On my last slide here, there is some links, etc., since the slide deck will be shared after to find more information about this project. And with that, I think I will stop my presentation and say thank you for your attention.
Many thanks for your keynote speech, Kiel. Very useful to kick off today's webinar. Now, with that introduction, we would like to show you a video, which is one of the outputs of the collaboration between the different projects within the diagnosis and treatment cluster. And after this video, my colleague Kay will present you a summary of the diagnosis and treatment cluster. So first the video and then the summary by Kay.
Cancer affects everyone, regardless of age, gender, or social status. Because of the tremendous progress that has been made in the last decades, more than 50% of cancers can be cured. But there is still a group of patients with poor prognostic cancer. Only 50% will be alive after 5 years. We must turn over every stone to find solutions for these fragile patients. The Horizon Europe Framework Programme has created the Mission on Cancer to understand cancer better, allow for earlier diagnosis and treatment optimization, and improve cancer patients' quality of life during and beyond their cancer treatment. The EU has funded 12 projects on diagnosis and treatment. While each project treats a different type of cancer, they are united in their effort to develop pragmatic clinical trials to optimize the diagnosis and treatment of patients with refractory cancers. These projects are all pragmatic in their approach, but they still must prove their effectiveness. Once they do, they can be easily implemented in clinical practice in an affordable way. The Strixit-2 project is about retroperitoneal sarcoma.
With this project, we hope to have enough data to be able to make better decisions in the future and to see for which patients chemotherapy given before the operation would really be beneficial and might even cure more patients.
The path from diagnosis to treatment isn't straightforward, but walking into the unknown is part of the adventure that physicians and patients agree to embark upon when they participate in clinical trials. The results can be life-changing. Beyond the funding the EU has generously provided, it is giving hope to physicians and patients in Europe. What impact does the Pragmatil project hope to have? And how can its therapy empower patients?
We know one of the challenges of actually administering TILs is administering the interleukin-2 after the TILs because of the toxicity that regular interleukin-2 has. So we came up with the pragmatic idea of could we administer TILs in another way that was less toxic? And this would mean changing the interleukin-2. We will do a randomized trial where some patients will receive TILs and the regular interleukin-2 versus other patients that will receive the TILs but then will receive a modified interleukin-2, trying to get less toxicity. What excites me is that we can really change the paradigm of how we administer TILs, so the impact can be really important.
Moving on from the Pragmatil project to the Legato project, which tries to answer this important question for patients with recurrent glioblastoma.
Whether the addition of radiotherapy to chemotherapy prolongs the lives of patients with progressive glioblastoma. I hope that the Legato trial will help to set a new standard of care for the treatment of recurrent glioblastoma by either showing that the addition of radiotherapy to chemotherapy prolongs survival or by consolidating the role of chemotherapy alone in this clinical situation.
The Salvavar project has developed a free online calculator to identify patients with poor prognostic ovarian cancer.
We have done huge improvement in the management of patients with ovarian carcinoma thanks to innovative drugs. But recently what we have found is that there is still a subgroup of patients with poor prognostic because they have a poorly chemosensitive disease and who will not benefit from these innovative treatments. We have developed a pragmatic online tool that any clinician can use based on the kinetics of CA125 that allows to know if the patient has a poorly or highly chemosensitive disease. So then we know that continuing just the same chemotherapy will not necessarily improve her prognosis. So we have to find some therapeutic solutions that can increase the chemosensitivity, and this is what we want to assess in Salvavar project.
Impact AML wants to prolong and save leukemia patients' lives with an effective treatment that can be used anywhere in Europe.
In this moment in Europe, 22,000 people are in this moment suffering to the recurrence of leukemia, and there is no treatment possibility homogeneously in our countries, European countries. The more important ideas that we would like to build up is to be able to treat homogeneously in Europe this population with a very efficacy treatment. In this moment, the expectancy of the life is short in the majority of the patients, but we are ambitious and we would like to find out a treatment that prolongs the life and let me say also to save some lives with a salvage transplantation procedures.
Through these trials, we will have more data driving us to pragmatic solutions that can be quickly implemented, that are low cost, regardless of the country's income, and that will eventually, hopefully, cure these patients with poor prognoses. Together, we're working toward a brighter future.
Good morning, everybody. We've seen the video of the first part of the cluster, which is the refractory cancers. And I'm just going to give a quick summary of the 5 projects that are under diagnostics. And this is the other part of this cluster. So we have the definitive project, which is demonstrating that making personalized treatment decisions in early stage HER2 positive breast cancer using the HER2-DX diagnostic assay improves the quality of life without affecting the outcome and survival rates. And then the next project is Endeavour, which is implementing an innovative risk stratification method to better determine which Barrett's esophagus patients are at risk of developing more invasive cancer and who may respond poorly to endoscopic therapy. And the next project is Mona Lisa, which is testing if liquid biopsies can detect relapse in neuroblastoma earlier than the standard of care, thus avoiding unnecessary diagnostic procedures. Then the Premio Collab project is aiming to prolong overall survival and improve the quality of life for metastatic breast cancer patients by providing refined guidance for managing response monitoring. And the final project is the Resolve project, whose aim is to safely reduce treatment intensity in MRD negative leukemia patients, reducing their side effects and the economic burden of the disease, and also to increase the quality of life for the patients. Thank you.
So, thank you, Kay. And now it's time that we move on to the first panel on treatment optimization. So, the video you have just seen is a good example how what we thought with the mission to pool resources to develop a communication tool. All of the clusters that have been rated under the cancer mission are asked to produce a video or leaflet within the first year of forming a cluster. And these videos you can find on our website, so the Cancer Mission Implementation website, which I would like to draw your attention to, where you also find more details and links to all the projects that are presented today, but also on the other clusters. So, and you also find the videos there. So now we will have our first of the 2 panel discussions. And the first panel will deal with the treatment optimization. And it will be moderated by Hugh Laverty, who is the head of the scientific operations of the Innovative Health Initiative. So it's my great pleasure to hand over to you. Hugh, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Annika. Thank you to everybody in the Secretariat for the invitation to moderate this panel. As Annika has just said, we're focusing on treatment optimization. And over the next hour or so, we're going to explore this topic with the panelists. We've dedicated about 45 minutes to a discussion with the panel members. But of course, we will have time towards the end for you within the audience to ask questions. So many of you who were here at the beginning, you have already heard this. So please raise your hand if you'd like to speak and ask your question directly, or use Mentimeter in order to type in your questions. Don't use the chat function. I'm just going to spend a few moments at the beginning asking the panel members to introduce themselves. So could we start with Elena, please? We can't hear you. Are you on mute?
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, perfect.
Thank you. Sorry for that. So thank you very much for the invitation to be here. So I'm Elena Garralda. I'm a medical oncologist. I lead the early drug development unit in Vall-d'Hebron Hospital in Barcelona, and also the responsible for the cell therapy program in the hospital.
Thanks very much. Can we move on to Antonis, please?
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Antonis Valachis. I am a medical oncologist at Örebro University Hospital in Sweden. I'm associate professor here in Örebro University, and I'm the clinical lead of the important project.
Great, nice to meet you, Antonis. And now Robert, please.
Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Robert Hofsink from Philips Image Guided Therapy in the Netherlands, where I'm a manager for public-private partnerships. And I'm also coordinating the IHI project IMAGIO on interventional oncology.
Thanks. And now Sharon, please.
Hi, I'm Sharon Glynn. I'm a professor in pathology and a translational researcher here at the University of Galway, and I'm also the network coordinator for NO-CancerNet, a Marie Curie doctoral training network.
And Mark, please.
Yeah, good morning, Mark van den Bulke from the Cancer Center of Cinsano. Cinsano is a public health institute of Belgium, and we are leading the Can Heal project, but we're also coordinating several of the joint actions. One is the joint action on personal cancer medicine. We are coordinating ECAN2, so the digital, and we're also very much involved in many other projects, especially also the one we would like to link on is the EUNET CCC on the comprehensive cancer centers, but I'll explain that later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And finally, Juan.
Hello, I'm Juan Ventura, and Director of Research and Patient Engagement at Cancer Patients Europe. For those that don't know, Cancer Patients Europe is a cancer patients umbrella organization with representation in more than 32 countries. And we are participating in many of the projects, EU projects, and some of those are in this cluster. Thank you.
So thank you, Juan, and welcome to everybody. Many thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to join the panel discussion today. Just a quick reminder for everybody that what the clusters actually are in the context of the Cancer Mission. When projects have been selected under a specific call, then the project coordinators from that call actually come together and they try to explore whether there are synergies or whether there are shared activities where they can do joint activities together. And then this information then enriches their projects. They build the synergies, and of course, they're able to feed that information back into policies. In this panel, we actually have represented two projects from the diagnosis and treatment cluster. We've one coming from IHI, one coming from EU for Health. We have one coming from, which is a Marie Skłodowska-Curie action. And of course, as you've heard from Juan, we have a representative of CPE who are involved in many things, including Salvovar, which we'll hear a little bit about later. So if I can turn to the panelists now with the questions. Elena, we saw in the little video in the introduction the work that Pragmatil is doing. Could you maybe tell us a little bit more about how your project is contributing to improving the day-to-day sort of experience of patient and patient care?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me good now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Perfectly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good. Thank you very much. So as you may know, cell therapy is one of the next frontiers that we are trying to treat cancer with. So just in a bullet here, we are going to take the tumor of the patient and we're going to take the lymphocytes and we're going to expand them and give them back to the patient in order for these lymphocytes to attack the tumors. And this has been approved by the FDA for the patients with melanoma, but there are a lot of challenges still for broad implementation of these therapies. And one of them is that you need to give it with high dose interleukin-2 in order for these lymphocytes to actually kill the tumors. So right now we are also developing a lot of interleukins too that could have this function, but don't have the important toxic severe adverse events that come with a high dose interleukin 2. So that's why the Pragmatil is trying to evaluate if we modify this complementary part of the TIL therapy, if we could broaden the population of patients that can benefit from it. Because right now, only very, very fit patients that have a very good performance status and that have a very excellent physical situation can go and receive these therapies because of the challenging of the high dose interleukin 2. Also, what we are doing is analyzing this in a very pragmatic way because each of the institution is developing their own TIL product. This is a bit different from what has been done before, and it helps with academic research in these complicated therapies that are costly. So we have built a pragmatic trial that allows us, each of our institutions where we had our own TIL product in an academic way, to create the evidence in a joint way in order to answer this important question.
And you've mentioned the effect that these important side effects have on patients, and many of the treatments you need to be very fit. Are there other aspects of cell therapy that could be optimized to improve the quality of life of patients?
So there are multiple things that can still be optimized on cell therapy. The first one is also manufacturing and also how we generate evidence. These are very difficult treatments to receive. They are very, very personalized. You need to understand that each therapy comes from the tumor of their own patient. So you need to actually, it's like a live treatment where you're giving the lymphocytes, the immune system back to the patient. So it's really very costly and very lengthy to produce. And this is something that in the way the Pragmatil trial is approached, we are trying also to address, saying, could we, with similar TIL products, but not having the exact TIL product, but TIL products that are the same, generate evidence in this way? And this could, at the end of the day, help answer questions in a faster way, which in the end will end up optimizing the way patients live. Because in the end, we perform these trials to answer questions that need to impact our patients. So yes, definitely something here to work on.
That's great. Thank you for that, Elena. If maybe I can move now on to Antonis. I mean, we've already heard, with Elena's example about currently very fit patients are most suitable for the treatments. And we know that older cancer patients really need treatments that are optimized for them. But unfortunately, older patients tend to come with comorbidities, even challenges such as malnutrition, and they need help with that. And I believe the Cancer Mission actually has, as part of their work program 25, a topic on nutrition in older patients. From your experience and your work in the field, what improvements could be made in this area?
Yeah, thank you for the question. We all know that we have an underrepresentation of older patients in our clinical trials in oncology, not only in oncology, but we're now talking about oncology. So we have to extrapolate data from younger patients, more fit patients, and then we treat our older patients with the same way. What we have seen is that those patients are at increased risk for adverse events and maybe less effective treatments. So we need to design studies that are dedicated to all the patients. This is the idea behind the important as well. And we need to have them pragmatic to overcome the barriers for patients to be included in this trial. So we need to have trials that are broad in the scope, they're broad in the inclusion, to be able to include all the patients. We need to think about the endpoints. So we need to think about what is important for all the patients. We need also to integrate in these trials geriatric assessment tools, because we have those tools. We're not using them in clinical practice, or but we need to do that. So as a part of a pragmatic trial, it's important to include this kind of tools as well. And then we need also to think about how we're going to follow up our patients in order to reduce the burden of the patients to be needed to come to the hospital. So we need to think from the beginning that we have the possibility to design trials that are dedicated to older patients in order to produce evidence that can be implemented in older patients.
And then I suppose, given the important project that you're coordinating, could you maybe describe us how that project is actually addressing this within your cluster?
Yes, what we are doing in important is that we have a dedicated trial for all the patients. We have it as pragmatic as possible, so the treatment is the same treatment standard of care that the patient would receive either way. But what we are doing is that we have broadened our criteria for inclusion. We have implemented a geriatric assessment, and if we have patients that are through geriatric assessment frail, we randomize them to lower dose of the treatment or the full dose of the treatment. So we're using geriatric assessment to, stratify the patients before randomization. And then we're using endpoints. Our primary endpoint is more relevant for all the patients. It's time to treatment failure. That includes not only the effectiveness of the treatment, but also toxicity or other events that can happen and can lead to discontinuation of the treatment. And at the end, our follow-up is as pragmatic as possible. It's the same follow-up as we have in clinical practice. We do not perform any additional blood tests or additional imaging, just like in clinical practice.
Thanks very much, Antonis. So just in the interest of time, maybe I could move on to Mark. You've mentioned briefly in your introduction about the Can Heal project that you were coordinator of, and we know that the Cancer Mission has as one of its goals the idea of implementing concrete solutions, and I know with Can Heal it was about integrating genomics platforms into public health so that they would be taken up and used. And I understand as well that there's now a new joint action on personalized medicine. So could you maybe tell us and the audience how you intend to move forward with this new joint action, what you actually achieved with the project like Can Heal?
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe the Can Heal project was an answer to a call in the European Beating Cancer Plan. So let's say the parallel project to the mission on cancer, where they wanted to develop platforms or solutions for public health genomics, but also for diagnosis and treatment. And when we started to prepare the proposal with a whole group of institutions that wanted to collaborate, we said we better answer to the two together. You could do it independently, but we decided to do the two together. So to make already a continuum between prevention and diagnosis and treatment. And that led to also the definition of a number of use cases, so practical use cases where we could try to bridge between these two domains, because you don't want to remain in silos. That was the principal aim of Can Heal. Can Heal was only 2 years, so we came up with a lot of recommendations that you can all find on a Zenodo platform, so it's all open. Basically, liquid biopsy was essential, and molecular tumor boards, but also the use of whole genome sequencing. We came with some ideas on how a decision support tool in oncology could look like. And in fact, afterwards, now there is a joint action, personalized cancer medicine. We were 17 countries, 44 institutions in Can Heal. Now in the joint action, we are 31 countries and 146 partners. So it's growing, which is good. It will extend. We bring in the experience Kjetil that he gave on Primrose and PCM will be integrated. And again, we will work with use cases. And we will have 7 pilots and 2 use cases that make it practical. And all the work packages fuel into the use cases, and we drive it towards implementation. And again, the 2 things that we really would like to stress is the application of liquid biopsy as an innovation tool. How do you bring that in a safe and secure and sustainable way into a healthcare system, and the extension of the molecular tumor boards. And I must say, I'm very happy to be here and see already that there are a number of parallel projects that probably have outcomes that we could start integrating into the practical care in personalized medicine, because we are going to work very closely together with another joint action, the one on the comprehensive cancer centers. We are working together with the network, the new networks of expertise. So these coming years will be years of integrating things into practice towards bringing innovation and useful innovation to the patients.
Thanks, Mark. I think you touched on a really important point. When we're all working on so many different projects, we have to reach out and find those synergies so that we actually can use what other people have done or have already generated. So we don't have to spend our lives reinventing the wheel. So it's great to hear that this is one of your goals. If I could maybe move to Robert now. You're coming from a slightly different perspective as you're following a IHI project. And of course, within IHI, industry has a very important role because we're a public-private partnership, and industry in some respects is in a very important and impactful player in our program. The Cancer Mission sets out to try to encourage, engagement with actors beyond the EU, particularly beyond EU funding. And I was wondering, from your experience and your knowledge of the field, what the Cancer Mission could do to try to facilitate and help this investment coming from third-party actors such as industry and the private sector moving forward.
Yes, thank you for the introduction of the project and the opportunity to address this, because I think it's indeed an important topic to raise here. Before I go into the attraction of private sector contribution, let me briefly explain the Imagio project. It is about interventional oncology. Interventional oncology is positioned as a new pillar in the modern oncology care, where most of the people are already familiar with medical treatment, like the chemotherapy or the surgical resection, surgical removal of tumors, and as well as the irradiation part, so where you have external radiation of the tumors. Interventional oncology is a new one, literally a minimally invasive technique under image guidance, using very small devices to treat the tumors very locally, so without harming the healthy tissue surrounding the tumor tissues. So that leads to a much more, let's say, profitable situation for the patient, less scarring of the patient, very short recovery times, and in the end also short hospitalization and patients getting back to their daily lives much quicker than compared to many of the other treatment options. So this is the scope of the Imagio project. The Imagio project does have a significant contribution of industry participants. Philips is the overall coordinator of this project, and working in multiple use cases in liver cancer, lung cancer, and sarcoma. So what we recognize already is that the Cancer Mission has a very fruitful collaboration with the IHI initiative. So with the co-creation of topics that are relevant for the industry players in this field, I think that is something that should continue to be aligned with the ways industry partners are also able to make an impact with their solutions in the healthcare domain. That's an important one to ensure that the topics are relevant for such industry partners. So that's in the overall scoping, but also, let's say, a level deeper in the definition of calls also scoping such that industry involvement is very attractive, and thanks to the co-funding and the collaboration with the clinical partners, can lead to early clinical trials that can be conducted in such IHI projects. So to give an example, within the IHI project Imagio, we are also running multiple clinical trials investigating the benefits and also generating the evidence of the benefits of such new clinical procedures. So as I said, I think already great work already done, and maybe thinking of some new ways how the cancer mission could also play its part and stimulate even further. You could also think of maybe labeling a project. So thinking about sustainability, ensuring that results of the project will find its way beyond the project lifetime. You could think of something like a cancer mission certified or labeled project that may help in attracting funding or new partnerships beyond the project. So that might maybe one direction that I'm thinking of. Another one, I think that also will resonate, is to facilitate the access to data platforms wherever possible. That reducing the duplication of data collection, and where industry and clinical partners can jointly also tap into shared data resources to accelerate the development of solutions. So that would be my take on how the cancer mission could contribute.
So thanks very much, Robert. And I think you've anticipated some of the questions that will come later on about the uptake and use and supporting activities after projects finish. But we'll come back to that in a few minutes. For the moment, maybe I can move on to Sharon. So you're working on a network that is supporting education and training, and we all understand with the rate of progress in research, technology, and particularly things like the impact of AI, education and training is really important for all of us. And I know that there's a TransCan project that's been supporting collaborations, research collaborations across countries for many years, and that's been supporting early scientists. But maybe, Sharon, you could tell us about the training offered by your network and whether it's making a difference.
Yeah. So our network, it's a Marie Curie doctoral training network, and basically what we're focused on is taking an approach as to how we might train the next generation of translational cancer researchers. So in this case, we have 10 PhD students all around Europe. They're in 6 different countries, and they're from very interdisciplinary backgrounds. And I think that's really important, because what we want to do is train these researchers to be able to take a team approach. So we have from the data scientists, like as you said, AI, etc., so important, to cell biologists, to pharmacists, to biomaterial scientists. And basically what we're trying to do is educate them how to work together to identify new therapeutic targets. You know, what would be needed to establish, are these targets actually important for patient outcomes? How would they go about developing new drugs, you know, to increase the drugs available for a particular target? And then ultimately, what is it needed then to translate it to patients? So it's really giving them 3 years of education, not just to get their PhDs, but also to kind of understand, you know, what would be needed to be able to do translational cancer research. And yeah, so that's kind of the idea behind it.
Thanks, Sharon. And then I think you started to touch upon this aspect a little bit in your answer. Can you tell us how then the project and then the network contributes to treatment optimization?
Yeah, so for this particular project, we're focused in on triple negative breast cancer and on a specific target called INOS. And so some of our associate partners over in the US have clinical trials, so they're in phase 2 against this particular target. And so, you know, you could say we're taking maybe 3 approaches within the project among addressing the treatment optimization. So number 1 would be creating additional drugs, because the drug that's being used is a pan-NOS inhibitor. So can we make more specific drugs that can be delivered, you know, in different ways that maybe might address comorbidities, etc. We're also teaching the students as well how to use kind of diagnostics such as spatial imaging to understand within the trial, what's the difference between a responder and a non-responder? And this can obviously be applied really to any sort of cancer or treatment, but really understanding, number one, for how do you select the correct patients to receive the right treatment, but then also if we can understand why somebody doesn't respond, then potentially we can develop new approaches to address that. And then the third approach would be actually using that information then to develop 3D models that we would use in the lab then to recapitulate what you see in the patient. And then this can be used, to further assess drugs, treatments, develop new approaches as well. So you could say that's kind of the way that we would be addressing treatment optimization.
That's great. Thanks, Sharon. Just in the interest of time, I'm going to move on to Juan now. So Juan, you told us that you're representing Cancer Patients Europe, and you're involved in many projects. If I could start with a general question to you, do you think that the Cancer Mission and its work and the projects it supports has improved engagement with patients and citizens and the public?
Definitely is been a huge development from some years ago, where the patients were participating in a way there was just a decision from the research teams and the consortium partners, and it was what is called, or it was known as a tokenism, where patients were more decorative than other things, but not real contributors to the project. Now every year we see more this effort from the European Commission to make the projects, research projects, patient-centered. That means the participation of the patients are at the core of the project from the beginning, initiating the ideas, the developing, and especially the final goals of the project are focusing on the patients' preferences, patients' care, and benefits, and then something very important from the patient's perspective, that is the sustainability of the projects, how the projects go beyond the end of the funding period. They have to think that has to be something beneficial for patients, and that's has to be the remnant, not just from the moment of the research project, but later on for patients.
Yeah, thanks. Cancer Patients Europe is a partner in the cluster project Salvovar. Could you maybe explain to the audience the involvement of your organization in this project?
Yeah, we do the participation and patient engagement in many ways. In this case, we are focusing to the communication and dissemination work package. This is very important because it's to try to expand and extend the visibility of the research projects beyond what is just the scientific community. So bringing research to patients. Patients are very happy to know about what is being done in Europe, that it can be beneficial for them, especially in research, but it has to come with a proper language, using the proper channels. So for that, it's essential to, and we are in this Salvovar project engaged into the design of a communication plan. So the communication plan is according with, agreeing with all the partners in the consortium to try to introduce the timelines, target audiences, specific tools, and so on. And for that, we also designed, we use the communication tools that are specific, addressing different target audiences, different stakeholders. As you can imagine, you try to use some social media channels like LinkedIn, you can approach the professionals and mostly the very high educated audiences. But if you want to really get to the patients and talk in their way, and you need to use other channels there. You can find patients like Facebook or Instagram and so on. And those are very important parts of that. We also trying to increase the visibility of the project, making the visible in the different conferences, meetings, workshops, and so on, not only for for the scientific community, but also all other types like ourselves. We organize a conference, an annual conference where participation of the researchers, politicians, patients, of course, and there is a good way to create a discussion and a questioning from the patients, and that improves the acceptability of the projects and the outcomes, but also bringing those into a different audience with a different language.
Yeah.
And we also are involved in a program of training and education, trying to engage, well, not only the patients, but also clinicians to improve this discussion. And then one last involvement that is very important is also to engage with policymakers. So we, as an organization based in Brussels, have a very good close interaction with European institutions. We organize many events at the European Parliament and bringing policymakers into research projects makes that possible, that the interest is not only something that it goes into new information, but it can also change the possibility of regulations and from the European Union.
So thanks, Juan. And I've got one final question for you, and in the interest of time, maybe you could keep your answer as concise as possible. At IHI, like most programs now, we really encourage the true engagement with patient organizations and bringing them on board. If you'd one piece of advice to give to a coordinator of a project or a consortium that's putting a proposal together on involving patients and the public, what would it be?
Well, that contact early the patient organizations or patients that you think that should be involved. That from the moment that you start designing the proposal, that is very important to co-create with the patient organizations from the beginning of the project, because later can be a little bit of a problem, and there is sometimes a time delay that is relevant for patient engagement to be successful.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. Now, I've got a general question now for everybody again. And we've touched upon this several times through your interventions, and that's about the uptake and use of the results into practice. Now, this is a key goal for the mission and a key goal for many of you. So can I ask you, what stakeholders are you engaging with to ensure that your results are taken up and used? And particularly with reference to when your project finishes, because some of you have touched upon sustainability. So who are you trying to involve so that the results are used beyond the lifetime of your project? And again, I'm afraid we've had an interesting discussion and very interesting topics, but we don't have much time. So can I ask you to be concise as always? So maybe we can just start with Elena again, if that's okay.
Yes, thank you. I do want, and I will be brief, but I do want to give a very good example of what Juan was telling before about patient involvement, because we do have in Pragmatil a huge work package of patient involvement, but it was my mistake not to involve them since the creation of the grant. So what happened is we were given the grant, and when we had to co-create, the patients wanted to change the primary outcome of our study. And we had to go to the European Commission and say, this has happened. And we managed to change it, but it did take some time. So it was a flexible thing from the European Commission, but it did show that it did bring some challenges. So I support the answer of one. A lesson learned from the following on. Yes. Yeah. So
And with that, sorry, answering your question in brief, we are talking a lot with EMA for regulatory approvals, and also in Spain, as we're leading this project of Spain with the Spanish agency. We are talking a lot also with other networks of cell therapy, like Joint for ATMP and other European networks that are trying to discuss how we should bring cell therapy into the clinic. So collaborating with other networks and also with the regulatory agencies about what evidence we will need in order for moving this type of approaches in. So it's a lot of conversations ongoing.
Thank you. And maybe Antonis?
Yes, we see important as we try to see important as a platform for how you can try to design trial for optimization of treatment of targeted therapies in older patients in cancer. So we have as a part of important deliverable and work package that related to cost effectiveness of the process, the whole process. In order to reach policymakers and public authorities. So this is a target for us to be able to showcase that this could be a platform in order to optimize the dose for target therapies in older patients.
Thanks. And maybe Robert, you had already started touching upon some of this in your answer, but maybe you have some other ideas?
Yeah, let me also add to that. So as Elena also mentioned already, reaching out to regulatory bodies when relevant, when solutions become market ready, then of course that's also part mainly for the industry partners, of course, in the consortium to reach out to. Within the execution of the Imagio project, we are also, maybe it's a different type of ensuring uptake, but expanding the size of the one of the clinical trials. So adding clinical sites and also just increasing the patient inclusion for the liver ablation clinical trial. So to ensuring that we have sufficient evidence to point out the benefits of this treatment option. And lastly, also happy to report here that Cancer Patient Europe is indeed already a partner in the Imagio consortium, where we will jointly, towards the end of the project execution, will organize an event with the members of the European Parliament to demonstrate, present the results of the project and also the impact that it can make.
Thanks, Robert. And could we maybe move on to Sharon, please?
Yeah, so I guess like our uptake is probably a little bit different. So it's really ensuring, that the students publish, that they secure intellectual property, they engage with SMEs down the line, so that whatever the findings are, that we can actually get them translated and along that pipeline to making a difference for patients. We obviously really do also work very closely with clinicians to make sure that any of the questions we have are relevant, that they see a future for these things. But yeah, so that would be probably our main ways, and then making sure that we can continue our funding as well.
Yeah, I was just about to say this is probably the challenge, because you're a network, you're an education and training network. So I assume you want to make sure that the work can continue.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, because whether it's new doctoral training networks or postdoctoral networks as well. But probably what we will do is identify a couple of grants where we can apply together and continue the work. But I'd say it'll probably break into separate packages, and but yeah, that is the big challenge, is continuing the funding.
Thanks, Sharon. Mark, over to you.
Well, I would like to continue on the training session. That is very important training for the professionals, not only the oncology clinicians, but also the nurses and the other people in the hospital. So that's something that we take up. And then, of course, for sustainability, you have to have support from the member states, and then a joint action is a special, let's say, instrument that the Commission have, because you have the member states in there. So this is something that we build up. And I must say, on Wednesday, we have what we call a governmental board, where we discuss with the member states how we're going to continue with a number of projects. So it's a process that is ongoing, very important. And I think also one thing we should also take the Commission aboard, because they can offer us a lot of instruments and tools to help us to bring forward things. And we had a very good example on that with OncoNGS, where we try to develop an innovative solution to an unmet need, a complex, a suitable, affordable platform for doing NGS, complex NGS testing, where we're at the level that we can have it now to the patients. And you have a next step where there is this public procurement of innovation that the Commission can help you. Very complex processes to understand for most of us, but once you understand them, they're great. But so these are things that I think we can also, we should not forget to do.
Great, Mark. And Juan, maybe I can come to you. You already touched upon this, that an important role for your organization is helping sustain activities and helping the uptake of results. Maybe you can say a little bit about your experience about what works best.
Well, our approach is always trying to get involved at the end of the project's policymakers. That makes a real increased visibility, that makes the project actually better understood at the European institutions. But we also do sometimes, when the findings are very beneficial for the patients, our own actions, going into informative leaflets and so on, and engaging with national level organizations, because in the end, it is important that they also do send pressure from their side at the national level. That is where the final healthcare decisions are taken.
Yeah. And I think you also mentioned the communication and dissemination is really key in preparing the ground and making all of the different actors outside of the project aware of what's going on. And this really facilitates then the sustainability, because if nobody knows what you're doing, it's very hard to then sustain your activities afterwards. So thanks very much. So that concludes the core of our discussion with the panel. And I can now open up the floor to the audience. So I'm in the hands of Lucas and the Secretariat if we have any questions. If you have questions, don't forget that you can just raise your hand and then ask your question directly to a panel member, or you can use Mentimeter to type your question.
Okay, Hugh, I already got a lot of questions through the Mentimeter.
Okay.
But
Perfect.
I would also encourage the audience to raise their hands and speak up in person. But the first question, I would read it out, and then you decide which panelist you would like to approach with the question. Is that all right, Hugh?
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right. The problem with TILs was that we don't know whether the population that go on this toxic TILs treatment are the same population who respond to other immunos like ICIs. Will the trials test this?
So I think that's quite easy for me to allocate that to Elena.
Thank you, Hugh. It's a very relevant question. So, and it indeed is something that is being explored. It's not the question that we're going to answer in our clinical trial. So that's not the focus of our clinical trial, but there are currently a lot of clinical trials that are trying to answer that question, and if TIL should be brought to the front line, for example, of melanoma instead of the immune checkpoint inhibitors or in combination. But that's not the focus of our trial, because in all of those trials, the TILs will still be given with a high dose interleukin-2.
Thanks, Elena. So maybe we can move on to the next question.
Yes, Kjetil has his hands raised.
So not a question, Mark, but Hugh, but since you asked the panel members about stakeholder involvement, and since there's also a question in the Mentimeter saying that EU research is great, but the translation into systems is less good, how do we make sure it actually gets to patients in Europe when HTA and regulators are not great at pragmatic? I was just interested in commenting on that, and along with the panel members.
But please do.
projects, our project Primrose has also patient involvement. We're talking to regulators, and we have HTA assessors in the project for the joint action on personalized cancer medicine that also Mark talked about, and he will coordinate, and where we're involved in the treatment work package. We're also talking to payers, regulators, and HTA assessors about how to organize things. But I really think, one thing is the regulation where there is a centralized procedure, but I really think Europe needs better organization and alignment of payers and how payers respond in order for things to move forward, and also not to discourage industry from working in Europe. Because at the moment, I think that's maybe now the biggest bottleneck, how unpredictable the process to reimbursement is for different products, basically, and with the meshwork of small countries that all want to make their own decisions. So to the extent that there can be collaborations in Europe, coordinated actions on how to move things to reimbursement, I think that could be one important thing that sort of addresses Europe's competitiveness in attracting new medicines. There's also the most favored nation thing that is a danger, what the United States does there versus how companies will respond, maybe not going to Europe. I think the Commission can do things there to try to coordinate payers. Yeah, just a comment. Thank you.
No, it's very interesting with your experience, and I was wondering, maybe Robert, would you like to come in on this, considering that you are on the industry side, so you are quite close to payers, reimbursement, and regulatory bodies and HTAs.
To unmute myself. Yeah, indeed. Cost assessment, early cost assessment, and health technology assessment is an integral part in the Imagio project, and so also recognized as a key part in the evidence gathering of the innovations in the project. Well, with that part integral in all of the 4 clinical trials and clinical studies in the project, there we do have a good contribution from the expert in that team, from the industry partners themselves, of course, also the awareness that bringing such innovative solutions in the healthcare space to the market does require the thorough regulatory approvals. Well, in our case, in the Philips organization, we do have a thorough process for that. So adjacent to the Imagio project, that will also be taken up when the project results are there to be further industrialized.
Thanks. Lucas, you said we have quite a lot of questions, so maybe in the interest of time, we take a few more.
Yes. Sure. The next would be TLs has been around for 30 years, but we never managed to get it properly into systems across Europe. Glad the TOX issue is being tested, but how do we implement?
I'm afraid, Elena, we're back to you.
Thank you. Well, it shows the interest on the topic. It's clear, and the reality is there's still a lot of challenges on how we implement this. One of the things to implement, in my opinion, is the difficulties is costs, and that's why I think academic research in this is important, and that's why I think efforts to try to see how academic research such as Pragmatil can help address these questions and bring this therapy in a more economical way forward are important. The other is toxicity, because these therapies, as I've mentioned, come with a big burden of toxicity. So that's why addressing the toxicity issue is also, I think, something important. We are addressing the interleukin-2. It could also be addressed the need of chemotherapy, high-dose chemotherapy. So we are trying to address with Pragmatil 2 of these questions, but there are a lot of things that need to be tackled for broad implementation. But if you manage to reduce the cost and if you manage to reduce the toxicities, and I do think there's more feasibility to implement these challenging therapies in Europe. And I do want to highlight that in the Netherlands and in Denmark, so both the NKI and HERLEV that are members of our consortium, it's actually the only people that have managed to have a phase 3 randomized clinical trials on TILs. So it does speak about the strength of European institutions in order to bring this type of trials together.
Thanks. Keithel, is that an old hand, or would you like to come in again?
It's an old hand, sorry.
Not to worry. So thanks, Elena. Maybe, Lucas, we can continue. See if we've got some other questions for other panelists.
Yes,
Give Elena a rest.
I'm selecting, I think this is a different topic. How does communication dissemination actually make sure there is patient-centered translation happening in these projects from their inception?
So maybe Juan.
Yeah, that is a very important and interesting question, because we try to adapt every single thing that is coming from the scientific part, including the updates, new findings, and so on, to the language of patients. For that, we do layman language translations. We do translations to different European languages if it's going to be part of many different countries. And we normally review that by patients and other stakeholders that can introduce the terms that are in use for every single country. They sometimes are a little bit different than the straight translation. So we try to get to the patients in the language of the patients, basically. So that is important to understand the scientific part, not given many technical terms that can be difficult, especially for a group of patients.
Thanks, Juan. Antonis, maybe I could come to you because you've mentioned the fact that you're dealing with quite a difficult population that is frequently underrepresented. So you have to communicate and you have to disseminate and you have to try to engage with this sector. So how do you go about this? How do you try to make sure that you can actually engage with this patient population?
Yeah, what we are doing is that we have a patient organization from the beginning, from study design process and onwards, and we rely on their ability to communicate with the patients. So we discuss quite a lot with the patient organization that is a partner of important to ensure that the information that we would like to share with the patients and in general with the public is relevant, and as Juan is saying, very important. It's in plain language. It's the language that is easy to understand and take the message of what we're doing.
Okay, thanks. So maybe, Lucas, looking at the time, we have time for one more question.
Mm-hmm. The last upvoted one in the Mentimeter would be the following. In regards with PROMs and maybe PREMs, selection and prioritization, do you have an example on how patient involvement has been instrumental?
So I'm afraid I would have to ask for a volunteer if you've involved PROMs and PREMs in your project.
I can answer if so.
That's
For example, thank you. So in Pragmatil, our endpoint was we selected several toxicities that we considered relevant, and we wanted to see how they were reduced. And this was the endpoint that we wrote. when we co-create the clinical trial with the patients, they actually said, well, we should be the ones evaluating these toxicities that you seem relevant. So right now we have the patient-reported outcomes, the PROMs, as a co-primary endpoint. So we have established those patient-reported outcomes that are equivalent to the toxicities that the physician is going to be grading, and the toxicity will need to be reduced in both the patient-reported outcomes and the safety assessed by the patient. They were the ones that, so it was a bilateral thing. So when we discussed the toxicities that we believed they were more relevant, they discussed also the patient-reported outcomes, patient-reported CTCA that believed they were more important, and that helped us also see which of these adverse events were more relevant. So it was really a co-creating process that took a while, and as I mentioned, we did have to change the primary endpoint of the study to incorporate patient-reported outcomes.
Great, thank you. Now, looking at the time, we've got 1 minute left, so I think we should draw the panel to a conclusion there. So, I mean, we've heard today about how cancer treatment optimization is crucial for improving patient outcomes, enhancing their quality of life. And of course, we've touched upon trying to make healthcare systems more sustainable as well. I'm really interested, and I've learned a lot, as always, from the panelists. And I look forward to learning more about the projects and seeing their results and how they can ensure that patients receive the most effective care for their specific needs as we go forward. So I'd really like to thank the panelists for your contributions. They've been really interesting, and as I said, I've really learned a lot about the work that you do, the important work that you do. Thank you to the audience members for your engagement and your questions, and apologies if we didn't ask your specific question. And finally, thanks to the Secretariat and the EU Health Policy Platform for organising the event. And with that, I draw everything to a close and wish you all a very good day.
Thank you, Hugh. And I mean, it's not the end of the webinar. We will take a little break since we have another interesting panel. So we would ask you to come back in a bit less than 10 minutes. So stay connected while turning off camera and micro. And then come back at 11:20, where we will then have our second panel on diagnosis and treatment of cancers in women and men. So many thanks to all the panelists also from our side and to the lovely moderator, and stay with us. We will continue at 11:20. Thank you.
So Annika, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and welcome back everybody to the second part of our policy webinar. So we will now continue with the second panel, which is about diagnosis and treatment of cancers in women and men. And the moderator for this second panel is Cecilia Burgas. So welcome. She's the project leader of the Knowledge Center on Cancer at the Joint Research Center, so a colleague of us. Before we start the panel discussions, I want to remind you again that the audience, you have an opportunity to come in. We have also, I mean, for the 20 minutes for your questions, and that you put into the Mentimeter and not in the chat or by raising your hand on WebEx. So that's your opportunity, 20 minutes at the end. But again, limit your questions and comments to the content of the panel. So we will now continue. I hand over to Cecilia. The floor is yours. Many thanks for moderating the second part.
Hello, Annika. Welcome everyone to the second session. I was already introduced. I think I can now introduce the rest of the speakers. So let me introduce you to the panel members for our discussion on diagnosis and treatment of cancers in women and men. It's going to be the same format as we had in the previous panel session. During the next 40 minutes, we are going to be discussing, and then we are going to have 20 minutes for audience participation. We are going to try to make sure that all of the questions are answered. Let's see if this is feasible. And we will discuss this topic, and there will be time for you, of course, to come in as before. You can ask questions directly to the discussion, so you can raise your hand, or otherwise you can continue using the same link for Mentimeter. It's better that you don't use the chat, so if you really want to have a question here, you can raise your hands and I will give you the floor. And of course, use Mentimeter. So I'm going to start with a short presentation of the panel members. The first one on the list is Aleix Prat. He is the coordinator of the Definitive Project, which stands for Diagnostics HER2-DX Direct Treatment for Patients with Early Stage HER2 Positive Breast Cancer. And this project is part of the Diagnosis and Treatment Cluster of Diagnostics. Aleix, would you like to briefly introduce yourself? Aleix, we cannot hear you, so maybe you're muted. No, but I can see you, so that's good. Yeah, we cannot hear you.
No, it's like, Aleix, it's like your audio is not connected to the session, so you may have to go to the bottom part of the screen. Next to the mute button, there is the audio options. And I take the chance also, maybe Celia, you can also check this because we cannot hear you very well.
Okay, I'm going to do it.
It may be that the system has selected your computer instead of the headset, or in your case, Aleix, another audio system. So you can test those because the speaker and the microphone has to be in the same system. So either your laptop or your headset.
What about now? Do you hear me better?
No.
Nothing? Still not good?
Yes, I think now, can you speak?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
I think it's
Is
better
it better?
this way.
Okay, I'll keep this one. Aleix, if you want to, while you try to solve it, now.
What about now?
Yeah, now it works.
Now it works. Apologies, something was going on with my microphone. So yeah, so I'm Aleix Prat. I'm a medical oncologist, and my main position is being the director of a large comprehensive cancer center here in Barcelona, Spain. And here I am also as coordinator of the definitive study. Very, very nice to be here today and be able to discuss this matter.
Thank you, Aleix. The next speaker is Benoit Yu. He is the coordinator of Salvogar, a European multidisciplinary clinical project to improve the management of patients with poor prognostic ovarian cancer after neoadjuvant chemotherapy. That's what the project stands for. And it's part of the diagnosis and treatment cluster, so refractory cancer. Benoit, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I am a medical oncologist working in Lyon University Hospital. I am the head of the clinical trial department in my hospital, where we treat all types of cancer. And Salvogar is indeed a pragmatic trial to see if we can intensify the chemotherapy in patients with ovarian cancer who don't respond sufficiently to the first cycles of neoadjuvant chemotherapy and who cannot be operated of their ovarian cancer. So the idea is to see if chemotherapy intensification would improve their prognosis.
Thanks, Benoit. The next speaker is Eva Kovachova from Diagnostics, which is a European Innovation Council funded company. Eva is coordinator of the ProScan, prostate cancer diagnostics, using a non-intensive test based on innovative glycan-based scanning. Eva?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm CEO of company Diagnostics that develops early-stage cancer diagnostic tests for 11 types of solid tumors that are based on analysis of glycans in blood using magnetic-based ELISA. Last year, we were selected as one of 24 commercially most prospective biotech companies in EU and became members of prestigious EIC Scaling Club that unites potential European unicorns.
Thanks a lot, Eva.
and welcome to the session. The next one on the list is Stéphane Lejeune. He's the coordinator of Strexit-2, a pragmatic clinical study of neoadjuvant chemotherapy followed by surgery versus surgery alone for patients with high-risk retroperitoneal sarcoma. This project is part of the diagnosis and treatment cluster of the refractory cancers. Stéphane, the floor is yours.
Yes, good morning. So I'm working at the OTC. I'm working there since more than 20 years. I hold several positions, but today I am coordinating our involvement in the EU-funded project. And here we were lucky enough to be leading 3 projects funded under that cluster.
Thanks. The next speaker is Malene Hildebrand, coordinator of the Premio Collab Personalized Response Monitoring in Oncology, co-creating clinical trials in advanced breast cancer project, and it's part of the diagnostics and treatment cluster. Malene?
Yeah. Good morning. My name is Malene Hildebrand, and I'm a nuclear medicine physician from Denmark. I'm also a clinical professor in nuclear medicine, closely collaborating with clinical oncologists, and we are conducting Premio Collab, where we conduct a pragmatic randomized clinical trial in diagnostics, comparing FDG PET-CT scans with conventional imaging. Thank you.
Thanks, Malene. All right. The next speaker is Iwona Lubowska. She's from the Polish National Cancer Mission Hub. And would you like to introduce yourself, Iwona?
Good morning. My name is Iwona Ługowska. I'm professor in oncology in Maria Skłodowska-Curie National Research Institute in Oncology. And at the same time, I also responsible for introducing early phase clinical trials in Poland by setting up first in Poland early phase clinical trials units. And also right now I'm involved in many European projects, but in general, all of them are related to personalized medicine. And with this, it was easy for me to go into a Cancer Mission Hub and the ICOS project with my team to integrate different activities around in Europe and in Poland. So thank you for this invitation.
Thanks a lot, Iwona. And last but not least, Monique Robol from the Dutch Cancer Charity, KVF. She's the coordinator of a national project which is addressing poor adherence to active surveillance in patients with low-risk prostate cancer.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. My name is Monique Robel. I'm a professor in decision-making in urology at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. And I'm coordinating this Dutch project next to international projects on prostate cancer screening like ERSPC and PRAISE-U. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you, Monique. Okay, so now we are done with the short introduction of all of the panelists. So now we are going to start the discussion. You are all very welcome to this webinar, and thank you for agreeing to be part of this panel. This is an interesting panel, quite complete, because we have 2 projects, as you have seen, from the diagnostics and treatment cancer, and 2 from the diagnostics and treatment cluster for diagnostics. 1 European Innovation Council funded project, a national project, and a National Cancer Mission Hub representative. So I will start by asking those that are working in a cluster. And I will ask each of the 4 cluster projects in turn. So I'm going to start with the order of the list that we have of the panel members. So Aleix, you are the first one. Could you tell us what is the benefit of working in a cluster?
Well, I think, no, thank you for the question. I think there are many benefits. I mean, regarding bringing our science to citizens, I think this is one of our main objectives. And I think joining forces across the different projects in a cluster can help achieve that. And when I mean citizens, of course, we don't talk only about patients, but also caregivers and the wider public in general. So, for example, about our first annual meeting that we had at the cluster, we talked a lot about going beyond traditional communication. So not just articles or social media, but joining forces and bring together things like, for example, short videos, interviews, or inviting patient representatives to take part of our cluster activities. In fact, we've already recorded together a public video that explains our cluster's goals, that we share many of those in a simple, engaging way, and this video will be available very, very soon. Also, for example, we've been working closely, not myself directly, but the team with the ECOS project, which help us reach local communities, which is also very important, and coordinate efforts of the cluster across Europe. Specifically, for example, regarding patient engagement of our study of definitive trial, also we have good examples that we've shared also with the cluster team. One is that in our study we have a patient advisory board that focuses on giving us feedback on all what we're doing during the trial development. But also in the trial we have a sub-study focused on patient experience, and also we've shared that with the cluster. And I think we can learn a lot about how each of the projects are involving patients, in what way, and we can learn things from another study. So at the same time, at the cluster, we're also planning to publish a citizens engagement report that will summarize everything we've learned during these projects. So we still have some years to complete, and also propose next steps, which I think this is going to be critical to keep improving how citizens can be involved in cancer research. So this is just things to start the discussion.
Right. I'm looking forward to watching the video and also reading the citizens report. Benoit, the same question goes for you, which is, according to you, the benefit of working in a cluster.
Yeah, thank you for this question. So that's true that the cluster was built after all individual projects were started. So there was no direct impact in the design of each project. But the fact that we work as cluster gave us a kind of framework where we had a space for discussing all together about our experience, about the challenge that we face. And that was very enriching, because we could see that there were some issues that were common in between us. One I have in mind, and I think it's important to mention it, it's the regulatory question about approval by the CTIS, the European Portal for Clinical Trials. And things have not been really simplified with the new CTIS system, and that makes that we all found out that either if you want to make an amendment or if you want to include other country, you have to select what change you want to submit, and you have to wait the answer before submitting substantial modification in the protocol or getting new country involved. And we all saw that it was actually delaying the possibility of having more centers recruiting in the clinical trial, and explaining some delay in the recruitment. And we saw that was a common issue for all of us. So I think it's important to have this space of discussion where we can explain our difficulties and see what solution can be found, because sometimes one project will have some idea and we can inspire from them, or we can move all together saying, hey, we have to improve the organization, the reglementation in Europe to improve the attractivity of Europe for clinical trials. The other aspect I have in mind is indeed the communication. I think we were in charge of coordinating the video explaining the pragmatic trials for poor prognostic cancer, and it has been a wonderful way of talking together, seeing what are the objectives, what are the difference, what are the common points in between us, and try to make a kind of building initiative all together, structuring initiative, and I think the video has been a success in terms of visibility of the cluster. And also it's important that the policy makers see that we we use the money that is given to us positively for trying to improve the poor prognostic cancer. So I think there is also a visibility aspect. So two aspects is sharing question and visibility.
Okay, thanks for that, very insightful, and also nice to see that communication was also mentioned by the two of you so far. Stefan, what is the benefit of working in a cluster according to your experience?
Yes, indeed. But first, representing three projects oblige us to, let's say, coordinate and streamline a better contribution to the various cluster activity. But on the positive side, we have three consortia, so we have access to a larger panel of experts, which we could involve in the various activity of the cluster. And maybe at the end, but to be seen, we could get a better impact on cluster activity because of those many experts that we are able to involve.
Okay. Thanks also for keeping it short, Stefan. And then the last member that is also working in a cluster is Malen. So the same question goes to you. What is the benefit of working in a cluster?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Well, I agree with the former speakers also that we have a lot of questions to share and to engage in different issues about these things for approvals and authorities communicating with authorities such as the CT's approvals and also other approvals that are necessary for the different projects. Also, I think we have issues to communicate how to conduct the trials is also very important. For instance, for the CITES part, there has been an issue about the diagnostics, if they are at all necessary to be regulated under the clinical trial regulation, or if the other things has been relevant, and here it has been relevant to share these kind of discussions to move forward. And also, I think a very important part is also about the patient engagement and involvement in our projects. Here we also have lots of benefits for sharing the experiences and being inspired from each other.
That's a very nice way of wrapping it up. Thanks a lot for that. So I have a question now. I would like to go back to Benoit, as he was mentioning the different challenges that they were shared with the other participants. So how do you think being in a cluster will improve your research? Is it a good way to avoid an application of work and to ensure sufficient use of resources?
It's a difficult question because there are some common aspects that join us, like poor prognostic cancer, pragmatic solution we can find. So that are things that join us. But there's also some important difference. You cannot, the consideration, medical considerations are very different from one cancer to the other one. Like just two way to assess the efficacy of treatment, the endpoints are necessarily different. So now regarding a question of how we can like have shared resource efficient and avoid duplication, I think there are things that we can share and things that are necessarily different. Probably in terms of shared data, I think it's complicated because it will always be difficult to share complexity of ovarian cancer versus breast cancer versus other types of cancer. Now it's more in terms of procedure, like how we move forward to submit approval to Europe, how we it's more, I would say, in terms of procedure rather than really on the material itself. Harmonized way of building it and probably involving different specialties that we can share that. And probably it's by doing common meeting all together, say this is the issue that is specific to us. Okay, nothing we can do together. That is shared, so how we move together. And we're talking about communication, so that's a good way. Communication can be shared. But technical aspects are more complicated. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think it's yes and no there, both.
Yeah, thanks for that. Also, it goes a little bit in line with what Malen was just explaining before. So I understand. And just to maybe go back to Aleix, as he was really explaining to us about the approaches related to citizen engagement. I would like to ask Aleix if there are common approaches to citizen engagement that is one of the requirements of the cluster work. Identification of the audience and involvement of the partner organizations, type of citizen engagement in the cluster in general. So any common approaches that you have seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's also not an easy question to answer. I think as yes and no, as Benoit pointed out. I mean, the fact that in the cluster we are sharing knowledge, and in this regard we're sharing how we plan to approach citizens, and also the fact that we hear how everybody thinks about it. Is true that each project is different. No, they are tackling different diseases, different populations. Even in some of the studies, they're tackling pediatric population versus adult population. But at the end of the day, there are common themes that can be helpful, no, to join forces in our cluster. The fact that we are using non-invasive diagnostic tools, this is a common theme across the different projects, and making sure that the citizens, patients, caregivers, and so on understand what that means. It's important. Here, I think, for example, we are joining forces to explain that. I think that's very important. Also to explain to citizens things that are obvious, but sometimes not so obvious. No, what it means to participate in a clinical trial. How do we change clinical practice? No, what type of evidence are needed? These are something that are common themes that again a cluster can join forces to make sure that there are different initiatives that sometimes can work in one country versus another one. It all depends also sometimes in culture and so on. But I do think that just being there, sitting, explaining each one of us how we see it and learning from each other is the way to go. And it can be helpful for the cluster itself, but also for future clusters and the community in general. So also, I think it's critical that together we write these reports across all aspects because that we need to disseminate what happens in the cluster.
Thanks for that, Aleix. Very complete answer, and also very interesting what your experience is with that. Thanks for that. We are going to now ask Stefan, because your organization, the European Organization for Research and Treatment of Cancer, is coordinating 3 of the diagnosis and treatment clusters of the refractory cancers, these 2 projects. So does this make certain aspects of the cluster work easier for these projects and for the cluster?
Sorry, what is your question?
If as your organization is coordinating 3 of the diagnosis and treatment cluster projects, as is coordinating 3 of them, does this make certain aspects of the cluster work easier for these projects and for the overall cluster?
Yeah, I should already answer, but indeed, so we have 3 projects or 3 consortia, so we have access to a large base of experts, and that allows us maybe to have a wider contribution to the cluster activity. And yes, but we have just started cluster activity, I think 1 year ago, and I think we still need some time to see what will materialize, what will be the output of the cluster activity.
Right. And in this first year, is there something that you can already explain, or a barrier that you have seen, a challenge or a facilitator?
Sure. The cluster meeting especially allow us to share our experience with regard to compliance to the regulatory framework in Europe. And I think the great majority of, not all of the project experience challenge when submitting pragmatic trial under the clinical trial regulation. So we're not going to the detail, but we face a very significant challenge. And the cross activity allow to sit together, to share our experience and to write down a policy brief that could be maybe led to a white paper, with which we could use to communicate to decision maker, to lawmaker, to explain them what is the concrete impact of regulation in Europe, which could be noxious for academic clinical research. I think nowadays we need really to be careful and to make our best to keep Europe on the map of clinical research. So maybe we need to ease the regulatory framework in Europe, of course, without putting patient and the quality of the data at risk.
Right. Thanks for that, Stefan. Now for the next question, I'm going to go to Eva. Eva, your company, Diagnostics, as you said before, has won a European Innovation Council Accelerator grant, which offers hands-on support on finding investors to finance innovation and brings products closer to the market. So could you tell us about your experience with the ProScan project and the challenges you face in your country, attracting investors and bringing your product to the market?
Okay. Thank you for the question. Yes, we have received several grants. We have received ERC grant, EIC Accelerator grant, Seal of Excellence on EIC Transition Grant Scheme. Apart from the grants, we are also eligible to receive investment from EIC fund that usually matches the terms set by lead investor, which is usually venture capital or CVC or family offices. So we have started looking for lead investor more than 2 years ago and received a lot of support from Deal Flow and from EIC Scaling Club. We talked to many investors. However, we realized that there is a big difference in investors' approach when it comes to investing into diagnostic companies versus companies developing pharmaceuticals. Many investors do not invest into diagnostic companies at all. And when they do, they already require us to have a product that has CE mark and that we have at least 1 million euro in revenue. When we compare it to the companies developing pharmaceuticals, investors are willing to invest already in phase 2 clinical trial, which is a long time before getting marketing authorization, before start of manufacturing and before sales. So there's a big discrepancy. With the new IVDR regulation, the requirements to obtain CE mark are getting very close to the requirements to obtain marketing authorization for drugs, which makes the entire process requiring significant investment related to tech transfer to our drug development and manufacturing organization, also in clinical validation. I mean, we are perfectly also when it comes to health. It's key that only the highest quality and strict regulation is acceptable. However, this between the willingness of investors to invest prior to CE mark and the time and the money it takes to obtain CE mark, to start manufacturing, to launch, and to earn first revenues. This is so-called death valley for diagnostic companies, which is very difficult to overcome. On top of this, Diagnostics is a company established and based in Slovakia, which belongs to wide EU. This creates additional obstacle for VCs from other countries to invest. When it comes to Slovakia, there are no local-based VCs that could invest beyond pre-seed or seed rounds. The only option for us then was to get investment through a crowdfunding platform, through which we successfully raised 4 million euro in pre-series A convertible loan agreement. 100 investors investing. However, a crowdfunding platform does not meet criteria of the qualified investor for EIC fund to match the investment. So we are therefore not able to get the investment from EIC fund, and we are in the same situation as we were, trying to find a Series A investor. in order to fund a prospective study of clinical performance required for inclusion of our prostate cancer test into European diagnostic guidelines, and also to fund tech transfer of our breast cancer test into our contract manufacturer and to obtain the CE mark. So as you can see, there's a big struggle for diagnostic companies to get the investment in time before the company incurs significant expenses, significant cost related to CE marking. Well, due to all these difficulties, we are prepared to even move our company to another country, basically to whichever country the investor asks us to move to. But what's sure is that we have proved many times that we are extremely resilient people, and we will do everything it takes to overcome this hurdle as well.
Thank you, Eva, for describing all the challenges and also telling us your experience and showing so much resilience. Really, it was very insightful and interesting to hear your experience in Slovakia as well. I'm going to now move more towards the clusters. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions to the panelists that work either on the refractory cancer cluster, so to Benoit and Stefan, or someone from the diagnostic cluster, so Aleix or Malen, if you could answer this question. In 2024, two important reports were published, the LEPTA and Draghi report, and with reference to clinical research. And this has led the European Commission to focus on competitiveness, as you know. In July, the life science strategy launched by the Commission was adopted, which includes a strong effort to strengthen clinical trials infrastructure. So in the light of this, how does this work feature in your cluster policy briefs? I'll give the floor first to the refractory cancer cluster, so either Benoit or Stefan.
Maybe I could start. To be totally honest, I have not read those reports yet. But to my understanding, I think the effect of the action that are promoted in those reports will take effect in the future. So maybe it's difficult to see any effect today in our respective project, but let's say it is inspiring, I think, for all of us that we need, as I say, to keep Europe on the map, and for that we need a proper investment into research and development. But today, I'm afraid it's too early to speak about or materialize the recommendation for those reports.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm sorry because I'm not totally aware of that as well. But do you have like practical requirements that we could discuss, because policy is large?
Well, it's related to the importance of clinical research and clinical trials infrastructure is actually having in the Commission at the moment. So if this is in order to, for instance, in regards to the life science strategy, it's the idea is to make Europe a global leader in life sciences by 2030. So it's related to the importance that the work on clinical trials and clinical research is having. And if you think that this is going to be featured in your cluster's policy briefs.
I'm not sure, because 2030, I will have to look at exactly what is required for me to answer about it. It's indeed too early. Trial is ongoing now. What I can see is one main aspect is the data sharing, which is very important. That's definitely something that will improve us understand better how we can harmonize the clinical research in the future, because I can give the experience we have having with a collaborative group for gynecological cancer. So it's called International it's a GCIG, so Gynecologic Cancer Organization, and it's international collaborative group for all countries involved in clinical trials. And what we see is that there are so many ongoing clinical trials that will be very difficult in the future to really make a comprehensive idea of how we should treat patients in the future, because all the trials are in testing patients in the same setting, but with different drugs. And at some point, there will be like obstruction of all the data together. And if we don't have academic teams that can have access to the data to try to make kind of meta-analysis, will be difficult to really understand how we can help patients, what should be given first and then what should be given after, kind of strategy, building strategy, therapeutic strategy. And this is where we really need like Europe, which is really leader in this question, data sharing, building academic studies that will help understand how we can make a comprehensive screenshot of the data and then try to extract information about optimal management of patients. And usually drug companies don't want to share their data. So if we don't oblige it, we'll never have the data and we'll never be able to do this kind of meta-analysis. But it's going beyond that. It's how we analyze the data by IA, make synthetic arm. So we don't lose energy and money to do always the same trials, but just with different drugs. At the end, we don't know what is better. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, thanks a lot for this analysis more in depth. I'm a little bit conscious of time, so I don't know if someone from the diagnostics cluster would like to come in, Alej or Malen.
I'm happy to give a little bit my insight. I do think that I mean, academic research, clinical research, because one thing is clinical research in general, but academic clinical research, I think if we want to be competitive in Europe, many things have to change. I think it's been described before, but I think in the cluster, we have identified all the difficulties in getting the appropriate approvals. In our case, with diagnostic tool plus the trial itself. So soon we will publish a policy brief that will talk about how we faced this issue, and I think this policy brief will help regulators understand what we're facing from the academic side. Because if not, if these difficulties are not solved, I do see a lot of difficulties in bringing academic clinical research up and running. Hopefully, maybe these policies that will come in the future will help us, but what we're facing today is much difficulty, and I think that this is not. If we want to be competitive, this needs to be solved. Just to give you an example, each country had a different opinion of how our study had to be regulated according to IVDR and according to CETIS. Just to give you just a simple example of the current situation.
Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot, Alej, for your insights as well. All right. This was a tricky question, I admit that. Ivona, now I would like to ask you, as in your introduction, you said that you are the head of the recently launched National Cancer Mission Hub in Poland, and you also have a background in clinical trials and precision oncology. So could you briefly explain what the National Cancer Mission Hub is about and what it means for cancer research in Poland?
Indeed, I've got those two. Yes, so I'm back. So indeed, this is part of ECO's project, and the Polish Cancer Mission Hub was officially launched in May this year. And this hub, as general hubs, are designed to Bridge, a national initiative together with European Cancer Mission, Europe's Beating Cancer Plan, and as I mentioned, Polish own oncology reforms. Because right now in Poland, it's a lot of initiative, and what we need to do, we need to connect with European. And just briefly, in Poland, we have a national oncological strategy. This is a governmental program for 10 years, 2020, 2030, and an aim is to improve cancer prevention, diagnostic treatment in Poland. So it's the same goals that we have in Cancer Mission. And based on that, we have investment in human resources because it's important to increase number of and competence of oncological professionals. We allocate also our resources in primary and secondary prevention. We invest in science and innovation, and as well as oncological system through National Oncological Network. So with this National Oncological Network, we would like to integrate centers, regional coordinators, and to keep quality of our care. However, in terms of research, the Medical Research Agency, this is the governmental institution which support development of clinical trials not only for oncology, but oncological community can have also benefit from this initiative. We can apply for grants to run academic clinical trials. We have also other instruments, National Cancer Center for Research and Development, more dedicated to basic and preclinical research. So all of those actions that are right now in Poland should be connected with the initiative at an European level to ensure that innovation reaches patients in a structured, equitable, and sustainable way. So a hub should bring all those initiatives together, and using, it was developed during the ECOS project in a pentahelix model. What does it mean? It means that we need to have 5 stakeholders, policymakers, research and industry and academia, healthcare provider, and also industry. And what is more important, patients, because all hubs should be patient-centered. So in Poland, we need to align national oncological efforts with Mission Cancer to strengthen Polish participation in European research and innovation program. And also in our agenda is engage citizen and empower patient organization to be present during and shape policy for research and care. However, the most important is to develop the structure that this hub, this action will be sustainable. How to integrate public and private resources in playing beyond individual grants. So in a short, hub, it's not only coordination body, but also the platform for discussion, for integrating different initiatives. So as I also hear the previous discussion, it's so important that joint actions already in place going into hub. And one of them, for example, is joint action Jane 2, when we are talking about network of expertise. And within this network of expertise, there is poor prognosis network of expertise. Benoit, perhaps after this meeting, we should have a stronger connection, because right now this joint action is, this network of expertise is focused on pancreatic and lung, but also the role is of this network to build a roadmap for other poor prognosis cancer, and for sure ovarian cancer is one of the examples. So this is the role of hubs, to integrate, to communicate, and to see how we can land in our country and to reach patients.
Thanks, Ivona, for all those insights about Poland. Just a quick reminder that as we don't have a lot of time, the next questions, let's try to keep them a little bit shorter. So I now would like to ask Marlene, a timely diagnosis is key for patients. So what do you see are the challenges in optimizing diagnosis, making diagnostics available in a cost-effective way?
So thanks a lot for the question. So I completely agree that a timely diagnosis is critical for the patients and for the patient outcome. And when we want to optimize the diagnostics and make them cost effective, we still face a lot of challenges. And some of them we already heard today, for also thinking of diagnostic trials, how are they regulated? And one major issue is also that we lack clinical trials in diagnostics that investigate actually the patient benefit. And this is since usually diagnostic studies focus on diagnostic accuracy, such as sensitivity and specificity, but this doesn't demonstrate the effectiveness. And then for reimbursement decisions, it's often required from authorities that effectiveness evidence, such as from randomized controlled trials, should be present before it could be recommended. So even though if diagnostic randomized trials are conducted, then it's often also difficult to interpret them because unlike in treatment trials, we have a direct an intervention that directly affects the patients. And if we have a diagnostic test, then it informs decisions that would indirectly influence the outcomes. And it makes it a bit harder then to isolate the contribution of the diagnostic test on the patient benefit. So these are some of the challenges. And for reimbursement practices, it's also necessary to address and assess the cost effectiveness. And if you want to do that also in a proper way, you will also need the randomized clinical trials for having these robust health economic analysis. And since we have a lack of clinical trials and diagnostics, it's also difficult to justify this investment or reimbursement of diagnostic practices. Finally, there's also this issue, the challenge of financing diagnostic clinical trials that we also heard about earlier from Eva, that there are not often commercial investors for these diagnostic clinical trials. And therefore, I think it's also a place here to acknowledge this initiative from Horizon Europe, also to support clinical trials in the diagnostics in a cluster like this one. So this is needed, I think, to bring evidence also to make diagnostics based on an evidence base. Thank you.
Thanks, Marlene. Now I would like to also ask Stefan, as part of the cluster. In the European Organization for Research and Treatment of Cancer, you have a good overview of the portfolio of clinical trials and the etiology of cancers in men and women. And as you know, the number of women enrolled in trials is not enough to validate sex-specific issues that change clinical management of, for instance, colorectal cancer. Do you find that patients who are often excluded from regulatory trials are enrolled in pragmatic clinical trials, such as elderly patients or female patient cohorts?
Yes, thank you. So indeed, it's what we hope. So when we perform pragmatic trial, we use relaxed LGBT criteria because we want to be the closest as possible to the real world patient population, and therefore maximizing the external validity of that study. But we should not forget that I think we have a continuum of clinical research which involve different type of study design, which are there for different purposes. We have the registration trial, for instance, with a strong internal validity, but of course they need to be supplemented with pragmatic trial, which will investigate the best way to use those technology. Coming back to our tree-funded pragmatic trial, but it's still a bit too early to assess and to compare whether the patient population we have recruited is more inclusive than the one in those more registration trial. But we will see that in the future. I would just like to do a remark with regard to the statement regarding that those registration trials doesn't have enough patients to validate sex-specific issue. In fact, we need to be careful with regard to subset analysis. Indeed, the study should be designed to answer to that research question. Otherwise, we are at high risk to have a study that is not designed, not powered to answer to that research question. So when we do secondary use of clinical data, we should be very careful because sometimes the data were not designed for such a use. But having said that, I think I want to echo what said the colleague. It's very important to do secondary use of good quality clinical data, but we should be careful about their use. And for instance, meta-analysis could help to answer to the question, validating, for instance, a sex-specific issue.
Thanks for your insights, Stefan. I would like to just ask a very final question to Monique because she did not have the chance to speak yet before we give the floor to the audience. Monique, men in general tend not to talk about their health problems, and when they do, the condition is often very serious and perhaps too late to be treated effectively. Does this have an impact on getting men recruited to prostate cancer clinical studies? And what can be done, according to you, to improve the recruitment of men to clinical studies?
Well, thank you for your question. And we know that some groups of men are non-adherent at all. You know, from data from clinical trials that they are often based on a selected population and therefore difficult to extrapolate to an average patient population. And we know that men that do not participate often have a low health literacy and in addition get little support from their family or friends. And in our project, battling the decline in adherence to active surveillance in men with low-risk prostate cancer, we are currently conducting focus groups to get more insight in the reasons why men do not participate. And also within the European Association of Urology, there's a lot of attention to this problem. Initiated by the patient organization of this association, the BALANCE study will be started, focusing particularly on Black men. And we will do qualitative research within the communities where these men live with the help actually of community workers. We have to go to these men to try to understand why they are so reluctant to participate in this type of trials. Also, there are two recently initiated EU-funded research projects, one for prostate cancer, PC Clear, and one for bladder cancer, actually Be Clear. And they will also address this, particularly this issue. And they will focus on getting insight in how to communicate and to resolve the problems in patients with low health literacy. So a lot of work is ongoing, and this is really, I think, very important in doing research that we connect to all the people that are eligible. Thank you.
Thank you for your insights, Monique. And now I would like to finalize like that the panel discussion because we would like to give the floor to the audience as well. I've seen that some have written questions in the chat. The questions have to be in the Mentimeter, so if you have the time, you can add them in the Mentimeter, and otherwise you can raise your hand and I will give you the floor. So you can, if you have any questions or comments for the audience, please raise your hand or add them to Mentimeter.
Yes, Celia, I think we have one question already. What is the status of participation in the health technology assessment, joint clinical assessment for IVDs?
All right. This question will go to maybe from the clusters. IVDs. Anyone from the cluster? Aleix, Benoit, Stefan?
Hey, sorry, I don't know.
From our side, we are participating to the stakeholder group to the HTA, But our members have not yet participated to one of those GCS or GCAs so far.
Someone else would like to come in and answer if you have the knowledge related to this? Yes, Ivona?
So at least I'm involved with early phase clinical trials, and because of this regulation, we see definitely that many clinical trials are right now not landed in Europe, but stays in States and in other countries in Asia. So I'm more than happy to see the final results of this work and to allow to conduct clinical trials, because indeed the diagnostics should be at high quality. However, it should be done in a way that right now and today patients are not excluded in opportunity to take part in innovation. So it was also mentioned about diagnostics, clinical trials, and I would like to stress that to work on the diagnostics, we need to have a clear pathway, because to do tests, it's very frustrating when we're done with this test, we cannot do anything. So with tests, it's important to have a pathway, how to go into intervention, how to recruit patients for clinical trials. So we need to provide the big portfolio of clinical trials, how to provide treatments on label and off label, to work on a way how to implement also on off-label approach for patients. And when you are talking about on-label registered therapies, where is the place for reimbursements, and how to struggle with these therapies which are not reimbursed. And at least for me, the heart of this, the pathway is a molecular tumor board when we talk about the personalized treatment, because with this we can propose to patient the best opportunity, and ask patient if she wants to be a part of clinical trials on standard of care. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ivona, for coming in. I also saw that there was a comment in the chat congratulating your work, so I thought that you may want to see it. I don't know if there are more questions in Mentimeter, Lucas? No?
No, so far that's it. Oh, wait, let me see. I think something just popped up. Regarding establishing effectiveness of a new diagnostic tool, is it preferable to use a randomized controlled trial followed up with a pragmatic trial, or through a pragmatic trial directly?
Okay. 1 second, because I see, Ivona, you still have your hand raised, but I guess it's from before. Okay, yep. No. So that question will be actually for Monique.
Well, being an epidemiologist and a statistician I'm always in favor of doing first a randomized control trial, because I really want to know the scientific evidence of the new treatment. So that would be my my view as an epidemiologist. Yeah.
Thank you, Monique. Would someone else like to comment? Yes, Malen? Or Stefan?
Yes, so thank you for the question. I would think also the randomized control trial could still be the pragmatic trial as well. This is what we do in the diagnostics, where we apply more real-world evidence using not as strict rules as in a proper randomized control trial, but where we still have the patients from daily clinical practice entering the trials, but do the randomization also. So this is also what I tried to illustrate by my explanation of how to show effectiveness of diagnostics, that we not only use these diagnostic studies applying sensitivity and specificity as outcomes, but that we also do randomizations to follow patients and see whether it affects patient outcomes in terms of providing patient benefit.
Thanks for that, Marlene. I also saw that Stefan wanted to come in.
Yes, indeed, we should not oppose pragmatic trial and control randomized clinical trial. A pragmatic trial can be controlled and randomized. That makes sense, and that's important for controlling confundant, etc. Obviously.
Thanks for that, Stefan. So now we are done with the panel discussion because there are no more questions from the audience. So I would like just to thank all of the speakers, thank also the audience, and to just say that we have had a very interesting discussion on diagnosis and treatment of cancers in women and men, and in which panelists have explained the challenges related to data sharing, project design, cost effectiveness, but also the importance of joining forces and creating shared spaces for discussion to try to face common challenges together. And I would like to thank everyone that was here part of the discussion. So thank you.
Many thanks also from my side to all the panelists and our moderator. And yeah, many questions we couldn't take, but as I said in the beginning, we will look at these and come back with replies. Now I have the pleasure to ask my colleague Jan van der Loo, who's member of the Cancer Mission Secretariat, to make a short summary of the two panels, discussions and takeaways for us, before I then will close today's webinar. So over to Jan, please.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Annika. So on behalf of the Cancer Mission Secretariat, I really would like, first of all, thank the moderators, all the speakers, Kjetil for his overview, presentation, and all the participants for your active participation and your interest. I think it's been very interesting. I say that also because we really use the outcomes of the past events and also this event and the ones that we're going to organize in 2026 for us to create a sort of, let's call it a feedback loop for ourselves, so the Cancer Mission Secretariat, for our Cancer Mission board members and our colleagues in HDEA who manage all these projects. So we will reflect on your input and see where we can maybe change a few things. Maybe, for example, think of the wording in some of the texts that we are currently preparing for the next work programs 26 and 27. And because in the end, this is all about co-creation exercise between colleagues, between DGs actually, and the stakeholders, the member states, and other Commission DGs. So I just want to mention, because some of the issues we heard are clearly, I think, of interest to you. So in early 26, we expect HDEA to have finalized the evaluations of the work program 2025, and so this information will be put online in the first quarter of 2026. And second, just to inform you that we're also finalizing the work on work program 26-27. Some of you may have seen that the Commission has started to put draft texts online so that everyone is aware of the developments of these work programs that we co-create together with member states. And so you will see that there will be a continuation, I would even say even more efforts on clinical research in work programs 26 and 27 on rare cancers, but also on a number of common cancers. The texts are still drafts, but we are very close to ending this process with member states, so stay tuned. And I just want to have a final remark that is, before I give back the floor to Annika, is that, of course, if you want more information, you can always contact us either at our individual emails or our mailbox. Look at the Cancer Mission Implementation website, and you can also sign up to the Cancer Mission newsletter. And I also would like to mention that there is also a newsletter by our colleagues at the JRC who are overseeing the coordination of several aspects of the work done under the Cancer Mission and the Upspeeding Cancer Plan. So our next newsletter is supposed to be published the second half of November. So With this, I would like to hand back to Annika for closing this very interesting webinar. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Jan. And indeed, I can only echo the importance of these policy webinars and giving the visibility of the projects and the clusters. So of the core work, so to say, of the cancer mission. But the more we advance the implementation of the mission, the more we need to show, obviously, also the impact of our investment. Not only in terms of financial resources through the Horizon Europe program and also other programs, but also where the mission makes a difference in bringing together the different sectors, the different projects, to make the links between them and to bring you all together and to broaden now more and more these clusters to other projects, to other stakeholders. So that's what we are aiming for. We will continue on that. It's quite some work, to be honest, on the one side, but we see with the high participation and interest and the questions you pose, there is a huge interest, but also that in itself gives us a feedback that we are on the right way. So we will continue next year. There's still the fourth cluster on quality of life, where we will organize towards the end of February, the next webinar, where we hope that you can also attend, because there's all the links between the clusters, obviously. And then we will also look into having kind of horizontal policy webinars to cross connections between the clusters. So that's the plan, the outlook for next year. As I said, we will need more and more to demonstrate what are the impacts or the expected impacts of the projects, of all the investments and work done. And that will also lead, you will see that in the course of next year, what we call a second implementation plan of missions. So of all the 5 missions, including the cancer mission, where we will need also to highlight what has happened, what is, really moving on the ground, also in terms of the stakeholder collaboration and the project's collaboration. So with that note, I want to finish. Thank you again, but also on behalf of our director who was supposed to open today's webinar, she couldn't make it due to urgencies. She apologizes, but on her behalf, I also should thank you. And she promised to make it for the next policy webinar. So stay tuned and hope to see you also next time. Many thanks to everybody who supported today's event. Goodbye.